I think that many Americans have a blind spot when it comes to health care. I will somehow forgive those who always insist that our country is number one in whatever it pursues. It doesn't matter if the competition be education, innovation, military power, or the number of billionaires. We have the best form of government, the best standard of living, and the best athletes in the world. I don't know if you read this. There's a new global assessment just released on corruption. Denmark and New Zealand received highest honors in having the least corrupt societies in the world. Although the United States came in, I think it was number 17 or something like that. I'm sure if you ask Congress today which nation in the world was least corrupt, they would claim unequivocally it was the United States of America because we are number one on earth. Nationalism is blind, almost by definition, at least in this country. Somehow, I can't imagine Norwegians investing much time and energy in persuading each other that Norway was the best country on earth. Don't see that happening. But then again, in Norway, they don't talk very much. Which reminds me of the classic story of the Norwegian who loved his wife so much he almost told her. And then, of course, there's the remarkable story from Iceland this week where the police shot a mad gunman for the first time in history. Can you imagine? The first time in Icelandic history that the police fatally shot a guy. Because the police there carry no guns. And when they had to end his one life, they apologized profusely to the family. The NRA would not think Iceland was such a great country. People in our organization here, Gun Sense, would think otherwise. It's all relative. When it comes to health care, Americans are convinced beyond any doubt that our medical delivery system is the best in the world. And yet, a front page story in the New York Times this week disclosed what I think we already know. Our medical costs are so high that most of us are either one emergency or one illness away from poverty. Even simple procedures are revealing. At Lenox Hill Hospital in New York, a public relations executive who cut his finger while peeling an avocado needed 5 stitches. He got a bill for $3,400. A 22-year-old female student who tripped while running up a path required 6 stitches. She was charged $3,000 at, would you believe, Mercy Hospital in Port Huron, Michigan. God, it's a good thing they were merciful there. The average cost of a day of inpatient care in an American hospital is minimally 5 times higher than in any other developed country in the world. Economists fix the term medical inflation to a health care system that has lost any semblance of what it means to care, and which has become frighteningly more difficult for people to afford. About 50 million Americans either can't afford health insurance or have been excluded from health care altogether because of a pre-existing condition. Something peculiar transpires in the minds of many Americans when the word affordable is attached to health care. There's a sense, and I'm just intuiting this, but there is a sense that when health care becomes more widely accessible, it will suffer qualitatively. This is not a recent phenomenon. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act, which would protect older Americans from bankruptcy due to medical bills. 17 months later, it was repealed and stricken from the books by lawmakers. Bill Archer, a senior Republican from Texas at the time, offered this rationale. He said, if you get an entitlement on the books, you can never get rid of it. What's so interesting about Obama's Affordable Care Act, which would make health insurance accessible to all Americans regardless of their health history and income, is that despite its embarrassing technological flaws, it seems to be working quite well in states that want it to work, like Kentucky, New York, Massachusetts, California, to name but a few. The flawed technology is really besides the point in this relentless wave of challenges to the health law a year after the U.S. Supreme Court upheld its central provision. It was about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks or so, I joined with 70 clergy from around the state of Utah as lunch guests at the governor's mansion. Governor Herbert exhibited all the manners of a gracious host until he took to the microphone. And he had the gall to address this diverse clergy population on the subject of morality. His theme was that our job as clergy and his job as civic leader, we were all really doing the same work. We were all on the same page. And that is that our job together was to build strong families. Wow. You know, for me, building a strong family starts with good health. Cutting women and children from the WIC program would be making a wrong turn on the path to leading to stronger families. It looks more than likely that our governor will preclude about 138,000 Utahns from receiving coverage in the Medicaid expansion, a pivotal part in the Affordable Care Act. The poor have somehow disappeared from the governor's equation of creating a moral society with strong families. The governor even admitted that the impact on the state budget would be a wash, whether he expanded Medicaid or not. Moral? I would like to hear the moral justification. I want to take a hard look at theology this morning and offer my perspective on why the Affordable Care Act has been so dramatically undermined by a Christian nation that seems unrelenting in keeping its poor from receiving a basic human right to health care. Now, from our reading this morning that depicts life as a hill to be climbed, it rightly contends that some are born at the top of this hill. We've got a few more folks kind of in the middle of the hill. And then, of course, a great many the bottom of the hill. And they're kept there at the bottom of the hill by a system that throws blame and shame at them, thus absolving those further up the hill from any caring responsibility. So using the hill as a graphic metaphor for society, we can see how upward mobility only jeopardizes the position of those already higher up on the hill. They don't want much company. It would have a leveling effect for society, which many reject out of hand because of the cultural belief that some work harder than others and thus need to be rewarded accordingly. Theologically, I believe we make a great mistake in playing compassion as an all-embracing religious or spiritual virtue. In fact, there is little, if any, reference, biblically or centuries of theology, hardly any reference at all to making a case for human connections, connecting those on the top of the hill with those at the bottom of the hill. And nobody is asked ever to identify with them or to feel their suffering, those at the bottom. We believe erroneously that fundamental to religion is the exhortation to be compassionate, where passion is understood as suffering, as in the Passion of Christ, and compassio, or compassion, means to suffer with, to feel another's pain. Compassion calls for a shared suffering, sympathy, and a desire to help. Now, as much as that makes sense to you and me, because we're good religious liberals, we need to ask, does this really make sense? All this compassion? Does that work? Does it really make sense? I mean, are we somehow going to insist that the Koch brothers exercise compassion to those who are at the bottom of the hill? Well, that's not going to happen any more than Congress will feel the plight of the uninsured, unemployed, undocumented. And that's why the prophet Amos called upon righteousness to pour down as a mighty stream. Righteousness means that if you break the word down, and it's old, Greek and Hebrew root words, righteousness means the right condition, providing the right condition in society so that justice may flow.